All right, guys, it is noon out here in the West Coast. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This is the session Create Better Short Stories. And we are so thankful to be joined by Jim Guarasci, who has for 29 years, he has had experience in film and television production. And he is currently the executive producer at Beacon TV, WBEC TV. He worked in multiple areas of production, including he's been a producer, a director of photography, a director, a videographer. He has awards that include from the Suncoast Chapter Emmy Awards. He has 5 regional Telly Awards and a Communicator Award of Excellence. Participants and attendees, please know that we started recording the session. There's also a question answer chat feature there, so you can put a question either in the chat or in the question answer feature, and we'll make sure that we get those questions to Jim. And also, because it's a webinar format, there is no video from the attendees. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in that Q&A or in the chat, and we'll answer them. And with that, again, we're very, very lucky to have Jim here. All right, buddy, take it away.
Great. So I'd like to say, normally I'd say nice to meet you all, but I'm not really meeting you all, but I'm going to trust you're all there. So I'm Jim Guarasci. Like you said, I produce shows for Beacon. One of the shows is Shortcuts. I was discussing beforehand how this show actually came about because of just some of the incredible things, first of all, the kids down here in South Florida are doing, but all through the country. I went to STN and was shocked at the level of work and the amount of work you guys are doing. So we're going to get to it because I can talk a lot and I got to squeeze a lot in. Throw the questions out there if you want. Hopefully I can stop in the middle or we can just look at them at the end. The first thing we're going to do is, these are our social media pages. We'll get back to that. But if you want to follow us, it's good. And I do recommend watching other people's work, especially peers' work, because you can learn a lot from students your age. You learn a lot from watching films, of course, but you know, a Quentin Tarantino film is miles away from where you are. So if you can get a better idea of what people around your age are doing and the incredible things they're doing, you can learn not only from the good stuff, but from the bad stuff. So let's start real quick. We're gonna watch a couple films and we're gonna discuss these throughout on different ways that you can hopefully improve your films or just a different way to think about creating these films. So here we go.
Hello, my name is Santiago Triana, and me and my crew, Agustina Villasudo, Luis Torrado, and Felipe Vargas, made a film called Mighty. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Shortcuts. Short film.
Help you. We're Supergirls. Yay!
I was right. Spider-Man is in with the Rhino. The last shipment of gold is due in today. Only the Rhino.
Superheroes don't exist. You have to grow up. Superheroes are for boys. You don't have superpowers. Don't ruin your Barbies.
Hi, I'm Daniel Williams from R.G. Stillman Douglas High. This is my video submission for a pretend movie trailer at the Student Television Network competition. It's for a fake movie entitled Incognito. Hope you guys like it.
Shortcuts.
Mock
Trailer.
You're late. You didn't give me enough time. It was due yesterday.
I'll get it to you by midnight.
Can you give me till tomorrow?
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 So, normally this would be the interactive point where I'm talking to you guys about what you think, but I'll fill right in there. I love these two films. These were actually in the first episode of Shortcuts, so they're a little wild. The trailer actually won first place for STN, so I love to play that one, especially for STN. But what I love about these films are everyone can do these. There's nothing crazy. There's no crazy after effects. There's nothing that separates some of the schools that are struggling for equipment. I mean, a lot of it's just camera tricks and other things that it did, maybe some sound effects. But, these are very accessible or films that you can make. And they also, really showed a lot of things I want to talk about in your films. Now, I could have gone probably and found these real elaborate student films that would blow your mind. It almost looked like a studio did them, but I don't think that's the point. The point is, creating films that hit, that affect your audience. So we're going to talk about some of the things, and a lot of the things we're going to talk about are what I like to call your toolkit, your little tool bag of tricks and techniques that you can pull out to make your films better. Let's first, of course, start with story, because we are storytellers, right? STN people. But it is always about the story. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. In fact, a lot of this isn't going to be really teaching you specifics like rule of thirds and all these other things. What I'm going to be talking to you about is what I like to call raising the floor. So you eliminate all these simple mistakes and you start with your film here. And then when you add some of these other elements, it just gets better and stronger. But we have to start with story because that's what your film is, right? So in the simplest way, and sure, you could do a whole college class and a whole college career on studying story arcs and story formulas. But let's break it down to the simplest things that you should include in every one of your films. First of all is the intro, the setup, or some people like to call it the want. This is where we meet the characters, right? Or the main character in particular. So we get to know them. We also want to talk about their wants. And a lot of people talk about that in building your story, but there has to be some kind of want. Case in point, you can have a film. Let's talk about, The Mighty, where that first film, we find out that the mom's, the antagonist, she's putting this daughter down. Well, if we didn't get that backstory on her, knowing that she wants to be a superhero, she dreams about all these things. Well, then when the mom hits that remote and turns off the TV, it doesn't hit us as hard. We've got to, first of all, get to know the character, like the character, and have an idea of what they want, so that when we bring up the conflict and confrontation or the turning point, it has an effect on us as a viewer. So So there's basically three things I'm going to talk about. And yes, this can be broken down much more detailed. But you need to have these things to make an effective film as far as I'm concerned. An introduction or setup where we get to meet the characters and find out their wants, preferably like them, the protagonist, but at least be interested by them. I don't like Michael in The Office, but I'm sure intrigued by him, and I'm curious to see what he has to say. And we need some kind of conflict, confrontation, a turning point. something resisting against that character in his want or her want. There's got to be some kind of conflict, and the mighty, it's easily broken down to where it's the mom and bring, you know, and shooting down her dreams, and superheroes are not for girls, and all those kind of things. And then a resolution and a conclusion. We've got to walk away from the film feeling or knowing something, you know. Someone described this, Kendra Hall, and I liked the description: a normal, an explosion, and a new normal. And when we're talking about this whole presentation really is going to be about a couple things. And one of them is thinking like a director. So when you're starting a story structure, you have to have a structure. You have to start thinking of these things and find a way to incorporate it into your story, because it will make it stronger and it'll make it hit the audience harder. So let's break down that story. Some of the things, and we're going to talk about, you know, raising that floor, right? Making your, you know what I mean? Your film starts here. It starts good already. Some of those things is to have a clear story. I can't do shortcuts. I didn't really talk about it much. If I have time, I'll talk about it. It's a show we produce here in South Florida that it's all high school student films and commercials and those kind of things. I can't tell you how many projects I've seen and watched, and I finish and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And they'll say, oh, well, you see, the guy walked up to the teacher and he actually, well, you know, he ripped his pants before, and that's why everyone's laughing. I'm just like, well, I didn't see it. I don't know why, you know. So when we're talking about story, we have to make things clear. We have to understand the story structure in a sense. And that's a weak point for new students. They know what it is, but you remember the audience knows nothing. So we have to find a way to make it clear. I advise, say something in your story. Have some kind of moral, some kind of advice, some kind of, you know, meaning to it. This will add weight to your story and make it much more meaningful for the audience. The mighty, usually I'll talk to the students when I'm in the classroom about it. Some of the things that's thrown out there is, you know, like the old, not all superheroes wear a cape. There's a feminist type angle to it. You can do what you want if you put your mind to it. Don't let people put you down. Girls can do anything as well. There's all kinds of little morals and sayings, and people will take from it what they want, but it should say something. You know, you want them thinking about your film afterwards, or feel like they've invested time and it was worth the time. It doesn't have to be there, but if it's there, it makes it much stronger. And then this is a strong ending. It really is all about the ending. Yes, you hear about the hook. I get it. And all the broadcast journalism, everybody hears about the hook. And yes, it should be there. We should hook them at the beginning. But really, we're going to remember the ending. You know, how many films have you seen that you were good, it was good, and then just kind of ended, and you're like, that's how you walk away. So you want to have a strong ending. And I encourage, if possible, not always, people write differently. When you're writing, it doesn't hurt to even start with that ending. You might have an idea of your film, not fully fleshed out. Start with that ending. Find yourself a strong ending. It can be a twist. It can be a resolution. It could be a surprise. It could be all that stuff. But you want a strong ending. That is what we're going to remember. And when you start there, and if you know your ending, think about how much easier it is to write towards it. You can have foreshadowing. You can do all kinds of things if you know where you're going to. And again, can't tell you how many films I've seen where I can tell the student just kind of ended. You know, they were more about the concept than the actual story structure. So that's where you should spend a lot of your time. Make it strong. That's what we're going to remember. And then, so I talk about, you know, raising the floor and building your tool chest, but this is what it's really all about. Creating an emotional attachment for your audience, an emotional connection. That's what everything's about as far as video is concerned. I don't care what you're making, a journalist story, a film, a commercial. It could be a how-to video on how to change a tire. Okay. This is where we start on our emotional attachment. How do you want that audience to feel when they watch your film? How do you want them to feel when they watch this scene? How do you want them to feel when they watch this shot? This is where you start. It's all about emotions. Okay, so if you have an idea, if your film's a comedy, now you got an idea of how it's going to feel. The music changes, the actor's performance changes, the casting changes, how you shoot it changes. Same thing with the scene. What is my point of my scene? You know, and even this particular shot, How do I want the audience to feel when they watch this shot? Because once you know how you want them to feel, that's where you start building. You know, I just talked about how to change a tire. Well, if the point of that video is that anyone can change a tire, well, think about that whole thing just changed. You're breaking down into simple steps. You're adding music that's more motivational. Your talent is upbeat about it. Oh, it's, you know, putting you at ease. Everything starts there because, you know, videos and we're about emotions. You know, we want people to feel something. So once we establish how we want them to feel, now we start building our tool chest on how we can do that. So okay. If I have students take notes, this is one note I have them take. Okay. And I'll have to pull out the paper and I make it all dramatic. And I said, okay, write this down. Writing is hard, period. Exclamation point, underline it, do whatever you need to do, put a highlighter on it. It's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for you. It's hard for writers. It will always be hard. So now that we know that, let's move on with our life and move on, you know, because there's a lot of hard things in life. That doesn't mean we don't do it. You know, writing is going to be hard. Just know that going in, roll up your sleeve and let's get to writing. Okay. And when we're writing, one of the things I want to stress with you guys is to write with characters in mind. We're going to watch a quick clip from a movie called When Harry Met Sally, just to give you a preface. There is a little bit of shots at the beginning credits where you get to know that the male protagonist is kissing his girlfriend goodbye. The female is kissing her boyfriend. And you find out that they're going to go in a car and drive on this trip together. But that's pretty much all you know. We're really right at the beginning of the movie. So let's watch this scene.
I have it all figured out. It's an 18-hour trip, which breaks down into 6 shifts of 3 hours each, or alternatively, we could break it down by mileage. There's a map on the visor that I've marked to show the locations where we can change shifts.
Grape?
No, I don't like to eat between meals.
I'll roll down the window.
Okay. So we've watched about a minute of the film. And normally I'll ask the students, how would you describe the female character? And I hear, you know, organized, uptight, you know, type A personality, all those kind of things. Sure. How would you describe the male? Sloppy, lazy, typical guy, laid back, all those kind of things. So just think about that. Think about the writing in there. Okay, we're a minute into the film. We already can describe our characters. Why? Because the writer wrote with characters in mind. This isn't just a guy in a film and a girl in the film. This is a particular guy in the film and a particular girl in the film that we all can relate to. I'm sure if I asked you guys, what do you think was the best line? What do you think I think is the best line? And inevitably somebody will say, grape. And they're so right. That's my favorite line in the film because it says so much. That's how he would ask it. Grape. He doesn't say, would you like a grape? He says grape. Just that one word describes his character so perfectly, right? We relate to him. We don't necessarily love him at this point, but we at least see a character there. If the female was offering a grape, what would she say? Well, she'd say, hey, would you like a grape? I got these from Whole Foods and I love these because they're really thinly skinned and I treat them cold and blah, blah, blah. Right? That's a choice. That's writing with a character in mind. And you want to do that. That's how we develop characters that we can care about. And we have to care about our protagonist in some way. Okay. Let's move on because I do have to compress everything in here. Let's talk about camera work first of all. And we'll talk about framing. No, I'm not going to go into rule of thirds. Hopefully you've been taught it. If not, you can look it up online. I don't have time really necessarily to teach you, but I want you to be, when we say raise the floor, yes, we shoot with rule of thirds. We want it to be framed correctly, right? But we're going to reach into our tool chest, depending on our film, and we're going to use that camera and we're going to use it effectively. Okay. I love the one on the left here from the Mighty. If we discuss rule of thirds, can you guys see my cursor? Yeah. If you would discuss rule of thirds and you break into thirds this way and you break into thirds that way, well, shoot. That's awful. That's a terribly framed shot. That doesn't follow rule of thirds at all. The kid's tiny. We're shooting down on her. It's terrible. I think the director did that. There's a reason. We watched that film. They know how to frame a shot. But what's happening in this scene? This is right after the mom came and turned off the TV. This is how does he want you to feel about this character? He wants you to feel sorry for her. What a great use, a subtle use of your framing to influence the audience to feel that way about her. Can she look any more weak and vulnerable in that shot? I feel so bad for her. Okay. And then, we can get into why we think the boxes disappear. Some people could say, she's surrounded by all this stuff against her and it clears up at the end or whatever, however you want to read into it, that's fine. But I'm really focusing on the framing and I love it. Real good use to reach into your tool chest, thinking, how do I want them to feel? And then doing it. Okay. What about this shot from Incognito? I mean, we are up in this kid's grill. I mean, we cut his nose off. It's not framed great. Okay, but why? This is where he's being chased. And it's a shaky shot too. This is how he wants you to feel. He wants you to get into the windows of the soul, right? The eyes. He wants you to feel his fear, and you're so close and you're uncomfortable. When I'm in a classroom, I will literally get in a student's face like this to they're like backing up on me because that's what the camera person and the director is doing to you then. But he's doing it for a reason because you're supposed to feel uncomfortable. This is the chase scene, right? Camera placement. Okay, I sometimes have a slide here. And another note I have students write, first of all, is get out your pencil and you're going to write tripod, comma, tripod, comma, tripod, comma, tripod, tripod, tripod. Underline it, highlight it, do all of that. Always use a tripod. That is your default. That's what you're thinking. My camera, I'm shooting something, I'm on a tripod, right? That's it. Okay. So first of all, and we'll get back to that. Where you place that tripod is important too. And I'll usually ask students, what's the desired height that you start the day off? And a lot of kids will say eye level. Some kids will say, it depends on the height of the camera person, blah, blah, blah. Well, no. What are you trying to accomplish with your camera? What are you trying to make the audience feel as they watch this? Well, if we look at the two shots from here, we've got the high angle down on the guy in Incognito. This is the first time we see our protagonist. And yeah, I love that it's a surveillance camera because he's being spied on. But I mean, this guy is not in control of his environment or his life right now. He's being spied on and he's going to be manipulated later. And that's a great use of a high angle shot to make that person look weak and inferior, right? And not in control. Subtle, but it is having an effect on you as a viewer. The Mighty, this is the end shot where she bursts into frame, which I love. She raises up to overcome her obstacles, right? A slight low angle, and it's just a strong shot. This kid looks strong. It's not about the hands on the hip. It is, but it's also about the camera placement to emphasize, again, how do I want them to feel when they watch this shot? What can I do to make them feel that way as much as possible, right? And one of that's where you place the camera. We can also do camera moves. Hey, I just said, has to be on a tripod, right? Well, that doesn't make sense, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's watch this real quick. Okay, now we're going to move to the next one, and I'll get to them both in a second. Let's watch this one. Okay, so first off, let's start with the first shot. Here's the introduction of the character, right? We want, as a director, to show her as a happy-go-lucky kid who's just having fun, right? She's out there frolicking out in the woods. She's enjoying herself. She's got smiles. All of that's great. But I love the use of the camera on the tripod and these slow little drifts with the camera, right? It's just kind of moving, following her here. It adds to that, just everything's calm, everything's good. Her life is great. She's having a blast. She's in her mind. I love that little, the way he did the cuts back and forth for her in a costume. What a cool way to think about, it's not a flashback necessarily. It's just a real creative way to know the viewer right away. We're in her mind for a second there, right? But those slow moves add to the whole feel of what the director wants you to feel about this character. she hasn't said a word, but we know she's happy. We know she's having fun. We have an idea of what her want is, all with nothing being said, beginning scenes of the film, right? And a good use of that camera. The next one now, okay, I told you always on a tripod, right? Well, this is the beauty of that, because when you break that rule, it becomes stronger. If you remember the beginning of Incognito, it's all kind of moves off the building, lockdown shots, everything. So when we cut to the chase scene and he's got this handheld shot, listen, gimbals were around then. They could have used that, but it didn't decide to do that. It went handheld, okay? Because those shaky shots will do what? Add to the chaos and the uncomfortableness of the chase, right? And this is the beauty of keeping it on a tripod. When you take it off and use it as your tool in your tool chest, it's much stronger. If everything was shot handheld to that point, it would not hit as hard, right? Also, and something I talk about directors as well, and when you're thinking like a director, I want you to be deliberate. I want you to make choices. I don't necessarily even have to agree with your choice as a director, but you should always be making choices and doing things deliberately. Like I said, your default mode is a camera on the tripod. When you take it off the tripod, there should be a reason. That's a decision as you're a camera person, because now that camera is active in the scene. It is a player now. It is doing all kinds of things that you maybe didn't intend it to do. It's no longer in the background. It's still about the characters, but now the camera, because it's kind of pushing up against there and say, what about me? Look at me. It's taking a little bit away from the performance, and it's actually becoming part of your interpretation as a viewer. So you want to be very careful and deliberate on how you do that. Now, sure, some films are all shot handheld, but there's a reason. The Office is, I keep using that, but The Office is a good example. That's all handheld, but it's supposed to be a documentary. It's supposed to feel like that. So, my point is, and I'll say this again, and I know what teachers deal with, the tripod is not a burden. The tripod is your friend. All right. And when you use a tripod, now your camera kind of fades away and everything's focused on what's happening. We're no longer shaky. We're solid. We're just watching the characters. That camera fades out of our existence. Okay. But when you take it off, that camera now is in play. And you got to be careful with that. I had a student submit a film recently that was really, really good. And he did a walk and talk and he did it handheld. And it was a little too shaky. There's that point where it goes from handheld to kind of shaky, and it's distracting. And that's the last thing you want to do, is distract from your content. So camera moves are important, but make them deliberate. How do you do them? All right. We all love the new DSLR type cameras, mirrorless cameras that you guys are shooting with. Listen, I'm not going to lie. They're incredible. The pictures you can get off these cameras are ridiculous. And I know shallow depth of field is fantastic. Okay. Just remember, not always. It's got a purpose. We're making deliberate choices. If we're doing an establishing shot of a classroom, now's not the time to have a shallow depth of field. Now's the time to have a nice deep depth of field to show the whole classroom and the environment. Then you can cut to a shot of a shallow depth of field of what particular student is important, right? See how we can use our tool chest to manipulate our audience. We can also do some kind of special effects and things like this.
Was right. Spider-Man is in with the Rhino. The last shipment of gold is due in today. Only the Rhino.
Oh man, I just love that rack focus so much. This is the turning point. This is it. This is it where this whole film changes. And man, that director knew it and did the right thing. That's slow. It's a slow rack focus too. It's almost like we're sucking the mojo out of this little girl. As a viewer, it's almost like a transition. It's like, oh, everything isn't so cool. Her mom's a jerk, right? I mean, such a great use of a rack focus, not just to do it because it looks cool, but to do it to have an effect on the viewer's interpretation of the scene and how they feel about the character. Great job. We can also use lighting. Yes, we talk about raising the floor, and I'll go back to even focus. Everything needs to be in focus, or what's important needs to be in focus, of course, and it can be challenging with the DSLR. All right, but if you're on a gimbal, Now's not to be at an F2. Now's to be at an F6 because you're going to be struggling with focus the whole time. So be smart. But anyway, lighting as well. We need to be lit well or exposed well, of course. But let's take it even farther and use our lighting on our audience and how we want them to feel. I love this shot. They could have done an over-the-shoulder shot in the Mighty of the TV and the cartoons. They could have done that. But this is such a better shot. We're still all about her, right? She's all good. And we watch a little flicker of the TV with the lighting, and we're looking into her eyes, and we're falling, maybe not in love with her, but we're definitely caring about this character. It's building our attachment to her, right? She's adorable. It's a great shot. And a little lighting gives us what we need to do about the television. I don't need to see the cartoon. I want to see her. This over here is the first time we see our protagonist in incognito. And you know it's a protagonist, antagonist, I'm sorry. And you know it's an antagonist immediately. There's the bad guy. And just the lighting alone. If I put that still up and said, is this person good or bad? You'd be like, oh, he's creepy. That's bad. He's like a stalker. Yep. And all it is one slash of light. That's all we needed to see. And also mysterious. We don't even need to see this whole face. So that lighting is really impactful. It's making us have a subconscious interpretation and an emotional feeling for that character. Okay. Here we go. Audio. I will tell you right now, audio is more important than video, period. And you're all saying, wait a minute, I got into TV for the cameras. I got in for that, for this. Nope. It's about the audio. And here we enter the world of the Achilles heel for the student filmmaker, the audio world. Let's watch a scene. I will preface this because this is from West Broward High School, which is a phenomenal program. And the students, and they made me say this before I could put it in my thing. This is, by law, according to them, I have to say this. They're great filmmakers. Some have moved on and are still doing it. They did some incredible work. They won a lot of awards. They submitted this film, and I use it as an example, and you'll see why. But they are good. And they explained that this was a project they had to do in class. They had like 1 hour to do it, but regardless.
You're up. You see this picture? This guy would have a Give me that.
What? This is main dialogue in the film. Huh? What are they saying? I have no idea. How much of that are you going to watch? Not much. If I can't hear what my characters are saying, I'm out. I'll watch a shaky film. I'll watch stuff with out of focus. I'll watch Blair Witch that's like almost nauseating. It's so shaky or whatever, but I'll watch the whole 2 hours of it or whatever it is. I'm not watching a film I can't hear what they say. Audio is more important than video, period. That's your content. That's your story. Okay, we need to hear it. And this is the double-edged sword to those DSLR cameras. They're fantastic, but don't forget, they're pretty much still cameras that shoot video. Their audio stinks. So we need to know that going in. I can't, now let's give the directors the benefit of the doubt. They did this over the shoulder shot because they wanted to show the relationship between the characters and all this, blah, 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 blah. And the location, well, okay, film school, blah, blah, blah. All right, but you know what? If you have to go back that far to get that shot, I'm not going to get it well with a camera mic. You're just not going to do it. And you're sure as heck not going to do it in a classroom where kids are still talking. You need to know that because you need to know from this point on, my audio is much more important than that initial shot I thought about. I need to hear them. So if you're in this situation, and I realize some audio gear is expensive and kids break it and all that, but if you're in that situation, you need to know that and you need to change it. Well, listen, he's got to talk, so I need to bring this camera close. Maybe I go to a close-up now so I can at least hear what they're saying. I need to make sure that everybody in the classroom lowers their voice. All that kind of stuff. But what you really need to do is when you're in the planning and the pre-production, you need to think about audio. I'm getting a shot of kids around the table. How am I going to get that audio? Is it 2 wireless mics? Is it 1 mic hidden under his book bag? Is it a boom mic? Whatever it is, you need to be thinking about that because you need to know audio is more important. That's huge. Okay. Now that we've raised the floor with our audio in order to get good sound, now let's dip into our tool chest to do things to make it even stronger for our viewer. Love it. Great sounds. I'm instantly there. And that's where we want to be. That's where we want our viewer to be, in that shot. We want them to be in that field with them, right? So how do we do that? It's about the sounds, more than the imagery, really. You hear the pine needles on her foot as she's walking through the things. Listen, I'm old. I'm not going to lie to you. But I have frolicked in a forest and run around. I know what it sounds like. I know all those things. And my favorite shot in this entire film, and usually a student can guess it, and you probably are guessing it right now, is that hand on the tree shot, that deliberate cutaway of her hand on the tree. But we don't just see it, we hear it. We all know what it sounds like to touch a pine tree like that, or a tree similar with bark like that, right? And you're not only hearing it, you're now feeling it. Every one of you knows what that feels like. And when you heard it, you subconsciously felt it. That's getting into someone's emotions. That's part of the whole, engulfing this viewer into the scene. They're now your couch potato, just taking everything in. And the audio is having a huge effect on that. Now they're seeing me, right? Okay, let's watch this one from Incognito. Oops. Messed it up. Would you see?
Late.
Okay. Great choice of music, first of all. Great editing in that. I think this won because of its editing, to be honest with you. But I love the sound in here. It's going with the music. It's accentuating those edits and the beat of this and the pacing of the scene. It's building a little bit. And my favorite shot in that, besides the keys, which I love the shot of the curtains where they reveal the antagonist in a silhouette, right? What I love about this, I know a lot about this film. He shot with a 50 millimeter, the nifty 50, because it's got a 1.8 and you can do shallow depth of field, blah, blah, blah. We also know, I know how wide you have to be to get that shot. You have to be pretty far from the curtains. So we know that audio sucked because we just discussed how they stink on those cameras, right? So they did one of three things, or they did something to get that sound. They either ran a mic closer to the curtain, they either brought the camera closer and had them do it again, or they even got a sound effects and placed it in. I don't care what they did, but they did it because they used that in that pacing. Dun, 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 boom. And now we get to dun, 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 everything goes crazy right after that reveal. And it hits on the beat with that sound. Off we go. Great use of sound and smart thinking ahead to get it and use it. You shoot with your ears as much as you shoot with your eyes. That goes with news stories as well. You have to be shooting with your ears. I'll normally ask students, what'd you hear? And they all say the car. Yep. The music. Yep. The dog chain. Yep. Which I love. The bike. Bell, right? And then I'll ask them, can you point out the bell for me? And then I start hearing, oh, there is no bell. No, there's no bell. Love it. Because this is the scene where she's still cute and now it's getting a little intense, right? She's about to go save this dog. And I love that shot, first of all, of the just slow motion bike falling. It's almost like the superhero going to save the day. Pew! We don't even see her, but she's this cute little girl. She's about to get into some issues here where she could get hurt. All right. So that cute pink bike falling in the bell is so great. Okay. It's all to that cuteness. The dog. Not only is it shot high angle, looking down on the dog, and not only is that dog adorable, but really it's all about the collar. Jingle, 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 jingle. The dog's about to get squished. This filmmaker needs you to care about that dog immediately, right? So one way to do it is make it cute and adorable, and one way is that chain. This isn't a boxer or a big dog's chain that goes clunk, clunk, clunk. This is an adorable little dog, and that little jingle, 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 jingle is so great, and in contrast with the car and the tire and all this going on about to happen. Great use of sound. That's what is doing so much to make us tie in. I've had students watch the scene in the classroom and they literally go like that. First of all, boom. Kudos to those directors. That's what you wanted. You had a person react to your film like that. That is awesome. Love it. That's what it's all about, right? And it's all about the sounds. It's bringing me there and making me that emotional attachment is adding, and it's all because of the sound. Don't skimp on the sound. Don't. Take time with it. Add a soundtrack of music that builds and you can really manipulate an audience with that music and how you want them to feel. Don't give me a silent film with just dialogue for no reason, okay? Think about audio. All right, let's talk about shot sequencings. I'm sure you've heard of this term. We want to shoot a series of shots that relate to the same activity, like a person entering the door. Don't just shoot them the whole thing, open the door. We're getting cutaways. 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Okay, gotcha. All right, so some tips. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. We need a variety of shots, wide, mediums, close-ups. You should be varied to create a more dynamic sequence, makes it easier to edit, and it's much more engaging to the viewer. It's more interesting, right? We're going to get to that in a minute. My recommendation, 25% wide shots, 25% medium shots, 50% close-ups. Close-ups are, first of all, easier to edit because you can jump between these. If you had multiple medium shots in a row, it's start to get jump cuts. But also it's more engaging. I want to be there. I don't want to watch your film back here. I want to watch your film here. I want to see what you're thinking. I want to see what you're doing. I want to go over your shoulder and get a close-up of what you're writing. Okay, we're curious people. Let's watch the scene again real quick for the shots. I'm going to stop there because we're running out of time. Okay, so a lot of shots. I think there's like 23 plus in there. What that allows you to do now, you don't have to use all those shots, but if you don't shoot it, you don't have it. And once you have all these little cutaway shots, you can now manipulate time. You think it takes that long for that car to go from where it went to where it's going? No. But the director knew what he wanted you to feel like. He wanted you to get all tensed up because the dog's about to die. So he stretched time, cut away the girl's face, the dog, the car, the girl's face, slow motion. All of this is kind of building on that anxiety. Now, again, you don't have to use all these shots, but unless you shoot it, you don't have the option. Okay, you might go back and say it's more intense seeing it as one long shot. But now you give yourself the choices in the edit. It doesn't take that long to get these cutaways, but you want to think about it so you can break it up and control time. Okay, do we have any questions? We're at 1 minute, Mark. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, hey, Jim, we have one question from Taylor, and she asked, do you think having a really great story can oftentimes make up for having kind of lower quality equipment?
Yes, without a doubt. There's feature films shot with phones. It's all about the story. You can do the same, all those techniques we talked about, you can do with a phone.
Yeah. I remember
Absolutely.
when, did you go to Orlando, STN Orlando?
No.
We saw a session with Andrew Jenks, who worked for MTV, made documentaries, and he said he'd shoot stuff on any kind of those big cameras, the VHS cameras, and he said it was all about the story.
Of course, yeah.
Can you tell me real quick, what tips would you give to distinguish yourself as a screenwriter? Can you give us maybe a tip or two about how to make yourself or distinguish yourself as a screenwriter? Oh,
for tips?
Mm-hmm.
Write a lot. You know, I have students come up to me and say, oh, I want to do this 15-minute film. And I'll usually go, stop. Stop. Do 5 3-minute films. Do 3 5-minute films. You're going to learn 5 times as much, 3 times as much than you will on that 15-minute film. Okay. I don't discourage anyone. My recommendation is just do a lot. Okay. And I usually put on here, especially with writing, finish it. Mm-hmm. You know, what is the roads paved with good intentions, whatever, you know, you got to finish it. Do what changes and mistakes and fix your film as much as you want, and then move on to the next one so you can learn from that one too. You know, that's my biggest recommendation.
And then one more question from Taylor. Do you have any tips for students who are kind of working by themselves, kind of like a one-man crew?
The biggest tip to that is just know that going in. You know, Blair Witch was shot that way, not because they wanted to shoot that way, because they had no budget. They were UCF students. They had to find a way to do with what they had. So if you know you're alone, you got to write a script that you can do alone. You know, if it entails all this elaborate stuff and a boom operator and all this kind of things, well, you need to change. You know, just know going in what your limitations are. Just like with that DSLR camera, know that the sound stinks on it. Okay, so you need to do something about that. Know that you don't have a headphone jack on it, which is so frustrating. So you need to do something to either check your footage or whatever. You know, just knowing it going in, and then deal with it. You know, what can you make? You know, making chicken salad out of chicken poop or whatever you need to do. That's my recommendation. Don't let it limit you. Just work within its boundaries as best you can.
Jim, we're pushed up against it. This has been incredible. I'm got a whole notepad versus notes over here that I was typing as you were going. But for the students and the attendees watching, please make sure you take a screenshot of that screen that Jim has up right now. You can follow the Twitter, the Insta. We do here at Whitney. We watch a lot of the stuff that you put up on YouTube as well. The work is phenomenal down in South Florida, and we really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, just real quick. These are not my films. These are student films.
Yes.
And you're going to learn from them. You learn as much from the ones you like as the ones you don't like. You just break it down. Think of them critically. And by the way, Ben, if you ever want me to, I can always Zoom to your class too if you ever want. I'm all over here about helping.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, attendees. We really appreciate your time. And let's talk soon. Take care, Jim.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.